Hi, so it's Marion here, and I thought today I would give you a little introduction to my house, and specifically the key differences between my house in Rwanda and the type of house that I grew up in the UK. So I first moved to Rwanda in 2007. I was a volunteer, I stayed for a couple of years, I left and came back in 2014. And over that time, I've lived in about 5 or 6 different houses. So, I've got a fairly good understanding of the commonalities between different types of houses in Rwanda. And I thought I would just share them because, especially if you're thinking about moving overseas, if you're thinking about moving to perhaps an economically developing country, you might be wondering what to expect. And so there are some differences here that I absolutely love, and there are some that are a bit more of a challenge. So when I sat down to write a list about the differences between the UK and Rwandan housing, I actually came up with quite a lot of them. So I'm going to go through them as quickly as I can to give you an overview of the main key points to consider, and perhaps also give you a few questions to ask a potential landlord if you're thinking about moving in. So here we go. Okay, so the first thing that you might not know is that most houses in Rwanda, most residential houses, are single story. So you don't tend to get that in the UK unless you're living in a bungalow. And interesting fact, but just over the border in Congo, DRC, you do find a lot of multi-storey residential houses. But for some reason, they didn't really take off in Rwanda. So everything's pretty much one story, which I really like because it makes life easy. Now, the other thing that you might not know is that we don't do carpet in Rwanda. So pretty much every house has concrete floors or tiled floors. Now, that makes life really easy if you want to clean the floors, because all you have to do is to pour the water on the floor and then sweep it out the door. Now, other things take a little bit more getting used to, such as the cooking situation. So it is perfectly possible to buy modern appliances in Rwanda. So you can get a gas cooker, electric oven, that is possible. But like most people, I use a 2-hob camping stove. So this is my trusty cooker. Now, if I want to bake anything like you would with an oven, I just take my large tin bucket, which you can buy just about anywhere, and I put a smaller one inside. Then I put my baking tray on top, and then I'll put my food, so my quiche or my baked potato on there, and then I'll cover it with a lid. And then I'll simply turn on the gas, and that acts as my oven. Now, it's surprisingly effective, although you can't really control the temperature very easily. And I think for most people, the biggest adjustment about this is getting used to living with gas cylinders in the house. Now, you can actually buy something now called safe gas, which is supposed to be a canister that it is impossible to explode. I don't have one of those personally, but they are available. The other thing that takes a bit of getting used to is that electricity is on a meter. So you purchase it usually using mobile money, which I did a different video about, and I'll leave the link below. So usually you can see how many units you've got left on the screen. And if it's flashing 0, then you're out of electricity. And if it's blank, then you're having a power cut. Now, by far, one of the hardest things to adapt to are power and water cuts. And they do happen quite a bit. In Kigali, in my area of Kigali in Kichiru, the electricity is fairly good. We tend to have small power outs a couple of times a week, or longer ones maybe once a month. There is also the Power and Energy group, Reg Rwanda, which you can follow on Twitter, and I've put the handle below. And they generally inform people because they're constantly doing upgrades to the power grid, and when they do that, they power out for a while. So they usually warn people before they do that. So if you are moving to Rwanda, it's worth following them just to know when to expect big power outs. The water situation is a bit more tricky, so it very much depends where you live. So years ago, I used to live in this, a mansion of a house. It was incredible, but it was over in Kanombe, so it had about 2 or 3 incredible bathrooms. Really beautiful, shiny showers, fully tiled. It was gorgeous. It was really gorgeous. But there wasn't any water in Kanombe at that time, and so I always had to order water to be brought by jerry can. So, that was an issue, and I lived like that for 6 months without any running water. And I lived in a house in Kisamente when I very first arrived, and then you only got water about 2 or 3 times a week, and it would always come on at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I would leave the tap on and I would wake up, I would hear it, I would go outside and fill the buckets if I could be bothered. But I think that situation has really improved in Kisamente now, so you don't have those problems. However, I live in Kachiru at the moment, and we're very lucky. We get running water, we get electricity, we get internet most of the time, but we do have water outs, and at the moment it's quite chronic. So we're just entering the rainy season. So in the dry season you don't have any water because of the droughts, and so they're conserving water with cuts. And in the rainy season, you can see it's raining and raining. There's so much water flowing through your garden, but apparently this clogs up the treatment centres and the pipes get clogged with silt, and that's why we don't have any water during the rainy season. So at the moment, about 2 or 3 days a week, I have no water. So I will show you what I do in my emergency bucket. But the main thing to know is that you don't have any control over this. You can't control when you will have water and when you won't. So it's really important that you make provision. For about $500 you can get a water tank installed, and I did intend to do that a while ago, but then there were rumours that they were upgrading the local water system and that the cuts wouldn't be so bad, but that doesn't appear to have happened at the moment. So for a few $100s you can actually get a tank installed, and that will solve your problems. If you don't have a tank, just make sure that you have enough emergency water. Okay, so this is my emergency water bucket. I don't know if there's anything in there at the moment, which I should know. Yeah, there's plenty in there. But because I've got water today, I am just going to fill that up. Now, because of the power and the water shortages, I actually bought a top loading machine. So you can get sort of the tumbler machines that you're used to seeing in the UK. But the benefits of a top loader is that you can stop it at any point and take things out really easily. So take things out, put them in. You can also control how much water goes into it. So I fill it up using a pipe just attached to my outside tap. And then I can fill up using as much or as little water as I need, or I can take water from my emergency bucket and I can pour that in instead. Although I don't tend to do laundry until the water's come back on again. Because you need water for so many other things. So yeah, generally speaking, top loader washing machines are easily available in many countries where water and electricity is a problem, and I do recommend them. I've had this one, it's a Ramington's, and I've had this for about 5 years now, and it's just been absolutely brilliant. It's never failed me. But of course, if the electricity goes off halfway through, often with tumbler machines, then the door locks and you can't get anything out. And if the water's not running and you don't realise it, then, it doesn't fill up. So it's just, yeah, it's probably a better idea to get top loader. Okay, so we've talked about the emergency bucket and the emergency water situation. So just to talk about the drinking water situation, that's another thing to ask about when you're thinking about moving somewhere. So here in Kigali, we're actually very lucky. So the water that comes out of our taps is usually quite clean. It's perfectly okay to put it directly into a kettle and that boils it, and then you can drink tea, coffee, no problem. Each night I brush my teeth with tap water, no problem. I can shower in it. So it's worth just asking about the quality of the water in the area that you're moving to. Now, for drinking water, I can buy bottled water from the shop across the road. I can get larger canisters of drinking water delivered. But for me, what has always worked is to use a chalk candle filter. So let me just show you what this is. So a chalk candle filter is literally just two cylinders, two metal cylinders, one on top of the other, with a tap at the bottom. And all you do is you open it up at the top and you put dirty tap water in the top, and it filters through these chalk candles into the bottom, where it comes out as clean, perfectly drinkable water. And many households have this. It saves sort of the need to keep ordering water because you can just take it out of your tap. And it's also better for the environment because you haven't got all of those plastic bottles kicking around. So that is something to think about wherever it is that you're moving, is what is the quality of the water coming out of your taps? Can you drink it? Not. Can you shower in it or not? Also, how do you get water if there isn't any? And whether or not there are water cuts going on and how frequently they are. Now, it's a good idea to find this out either by asking people locally in the area that you're going to, or if you're not there in person, you can join a local community forum. And almost every country and almost every city has one. And it's a good idea just to ask in there, you know, I'm thinking about moving to this area, what's the situation with water and electricity? And you'll probably get quite an honest response at that point. The problem is that if you ask the person who is showing you the house, they've probably got a vested interest in you renting that property. So they might not always be completely forthcoming about the situation. And you might also be visiting on a day when there is water, when there is electricity. So it might not look like there is any problem. Like, for instance, if you come to my house, 4 days out of 5, you're going to get full water, full electricity, and you're going to think, oh, there's no problem here. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there isn't anything. So, you know, do your research, do get on the internet, get on a local forum and say, look, what is it like living in this specific area? So the next slightly weird one is bars on windows. Pretty much every house in Rwanda has these. Yeah. So in a way they make you feel safe because nobody can get in, but at the same point you can't get out. So, you know, I guess when I first moved here I noticed them a lot more. Now that I live with them all the time, I don't kind of notice them. Although I did visit a friend in Kenya once, and she had a full-blown metal gate like this one, literally between her main room and her bedroom area, and I think I probably would have felt a little bit strange about having something like that, but just as bars on the windows, pretty standard. So tin roofs are another major difference. So in the UK you tend to have tiled roofs, you tend to have insulations, so when it rains it's kind of quiet and cosy. Now, we do get some fairly heavy rain here during the year, and when that happens, because you've got a tin roof, it can be really hard to hear anything. And the other thing that you might notice here is that pretty much all houses have sort of like air holes going from the outside to the inside. So as you can see from the other side, those air vents go right the way through. They've got mosquito netting on, but it kind of means that you don't really get any soundproofing. So if you've got these and your neighbours are outside in their garden talking, or somebody's playing music, there really isn't much protection from the sound. And again, kind of in the UK, you have double glazed windows, which also help to keep out the sound. But here you just have sort of single glazed windows, which, to be fair, really helps to keep the temperature down and to keep the houses cool. So maybe the next thing to mention is the mosquito net in the room. So you do need mosquito netting if you're living in a country with malaria, which Rwanda does have. And I love mosquito nets, but I like them when they're square like this. So you can get just the ones that come down from a circle on the ceiling and they just drape over the bed. But I really do recommend getting square posts installed and a fitted square net, because it gives you so much room just to sort of move around in the bed. So especially if you're claustrophobic, you don't like things surrounding you when you're asleep, then definitely square mosquito nets are the way to go. So another thing to mention about bedding is in the UK, beds as standard have sprung mattresses. So they've got springs inside them, and that makes them quite bouncy. Now you can buy a spring mattress in Rwanda, but they do tend to be rather expensive. So what most people sleep on is a bed made of very, very thick foam. So it's usually called Rwanda foam, and it's just very, very firm padded foam. And they're perfectly comfortable to sleep on, and they do tend to last a few years. But then they sort of get a dip in them and you have to turn them over. But, you know, like I say, you can get a sprung mattress, but it will be more expensive. Okay, so the final thing that I'm going to discuss over my neighbour who's currently hammering something into the ground is the issue of postal delivery. So my gate doesn't have a number on it. So house numbers are kind of a new thing in Rwanda. Most houses on a paved road do have numbers now. I don't live on a paved road, I don't have a house number, but even if you have got a house number, you don't get your mail delivered to the door. So if you're coming from the UK or you're coming from America, where you're used to having your personal mail delivered through your letterbox once a day, that doesn't happen here. What most people do is they hire out a PO box at the central post office in town. Now, I actually stopped renting mine. I kind of gave up on post. Firstly, because I don't get a lot of it, and secondly, because when friends and family were sending me parcels, it was taking anywhere between 3 months to 6 months, sometimes 9 months for those parcels to actually arrive. So there wasn't really much point in having one. So again, that might be something you want to check out before you move somewhere, is how far you are from a post office and how long mail generally takes to arrive. Okay guys, so that was a brief introduction to my house and the key differences between living in Rwanda and living in the UK. So hopefully it's been useful if you're thinking about moving to East Africa or, you know, to an economically developing country. There are going to be a few differences to think about, a few questions you might like to ask before you arrive, especially around water and electricity and how far you are from a post office if you need to go and collect your mail. So yeah, let me know what life is like where you're living. If you are living, you know, outside of the UK, outside of America, do drop me a line. Tell me what the key differences were and what the big adjustments were for you when you first moved. Was there anything that you found particularly challenging? And if you've got any follow-up questions, just drop them below, and if I can, I will try to answer them.